Picture this, you are lounging on a beach chair, a virgin pina colada in your hand, gazing at the crystal clear waves lapping against the Puerto Rican shores. Although Puerto Rico is already a U.S. territory, this can be a more achievable reality if Puerto Rico was admitted as a U.S. state.
Is the United States tired of all their debt?
Yes.
Too bad! If Puerto Rico were to become a state, you can have more debt!
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not.
I'm Trinity.
And I'm Carissa.
And welcome to the Puerto Rican debate. Since 1898, Puerto Rico has been a U.S. territory. More specifically, it is classified as an unincorporated territory. This is a map of Puerto Rico in relation to the United States.
Recently, a life-changing event struck Puerto Rico. Hurricane Maria, the strongest hurricane to hit Puerto Rico in more than 80 years, destroyed homes, roads, and bridges, knocked out power across the entire island, and triggered heavy flooding. Here are some pictures showing the hurricane's devastation. To ensure equal treatment and financial support, the United States of America should allow Puerto Rico to become the 51st state.
To avoid debt and Puerto Rico's culture loss, Puerto Rico should remain an independent territory and should not become a state. Puerto Rico faces a severe amount of debt that the United States does not want. According to a study by the U.S. Government Office, Puerto Rico has $70 billion in debt. This debt will continue to grow. Having to pay off this excessive amount of debt, if Puerto Rico were to become a state, our country as a whole will suffer. The United States is already in debt, and adding more to this high number will mean consequences for the country. This could lead to higher taxes and a higher tax rate for our future generations. And we may not get what this country needs to grow and become more efficient because of this debt.
Puerto Rico needs financial help to pay for the hurricanes and natural disasters. If they become a state, they could receive help from the United States.
True, but our economy and country will crash due to helping Puerto Rico, and it would take more time to pay off their debt along with the already existing U.S. debt.
The lack of representation and political power in Puerto Rico takes away their voice in the U.S. government. According to VOA, Puerto Ricans cannot vote in presidential elections. They have one congressional representative to the United States Congress who has limited voting rights. Even though all Puerto Ricans are U.S. citizens, the 3.4 million Americans who live in Puerto Rico have fewer constitutional rights than anyone living in the 50 states.
The problem is that fewer than a quarter of registered Puerto Rican voters turned out to the polls on the issue of statehood.
That was mostly the result of a boycott from the anti-statehood political groups, who were upset with the wording of the referendum, implying that Puerto Rico's culture would be affected by statehood. But of the 23% of the voters that voted, 97% were in favor of Puerto Rico's statehood.
Becoming a state, Puerto Rico is at risk of losing their culture. A video made by USA Today agrees that if Puerto Rico becomes a state, their cultural identity will be lost and they will lose some of their customs. Losing culture is negative because culture is how people are defined and who they become. Without it, people feel life without purpose and they don't have much to celebrate.
Becoming a new state, Puerto Ricans can still practice their culture and keep their customs.
True, but in becoming a state, the #1 language is English, and different cultures are sometimes frowned upon. Therefore, Puerto Rico will be losing more than they are gaining, and if Puerto Rico were to become a state, they would be at risk of losing their culture.
The Puerto Rican territory doesn't receive as much money as the federal states do, bringing them into an economic crisis. According to PBS, nearly half of the island's 3.4 million people live in poverty, and unemployment is 12.4%. compared with 4.3% on the U.S. mainland. Because Puerto Rico is not as financially supported as the U.S. states, an overwhelming amount of poverty is the result.
If Puerto Rico were a state, it would greatly increase federal taxes on the Puerto Ricans.
The desperate need of federal money from the U.S. overrules the minor taxes that every citizen has to pay. Elected officials said making the island a state would help it receive the help it needs and ensure that its residents are no longer treated as second-class citizens by the federal government.
In the voting category, Puerto Rico has a poor participation rate. According to VOA, only 23% of Puerto Ricans voted on the issue of statehood. If only a quarter of Puerto Ricans care to vote, then there will be a strong lack of participation from them, and they won't be a good addition to the states. This also shows them to show a lack of interest in political problems.
But of the people that did vote, most of them were for Puerto Rico's statehood.
Although that is true, there must be a strong participation rate from the whole territory to show that they care and that they want to be a state. But because only a quarter voted, it shows they're not enthusiastic.
Because of the destruction of Hurricane Maria, Puerto Rico is in need of financial support. Puerto Rico's financial crisis began to revive support for statehood, and now Hurricane Maria has made the matter even more urgent to resolve. U.S. territory leaders have also decided that a new push for statehood should be part of the recovery effort.
Puerto Rico says it cannot pay back its large debt of $70 billion from the destruction caused by Hurricane Maria.
The federal government is going to have to continue sending money to Puerto Rico. Under statehood, Puerto Ricans will be paying into the system. Financially, they will do much better. And eventually, in 5-10 years, Puerto Rico is going to be paying more into the system than the money that they send to Puerto Rico.
Life with Puerto Rico as a state will be bad. Our country will be in more debt from their debt, and that will cause lots of consequences to our country. Fight for Puerto Rico to not become a state, and share your thoughts with your community and your government to not have Puerto Rico become a state.
Think of the impact statehood would have on the lives of Puerto Ricans if the U.S. starts making an effort to care. The lack of equality and opportunity and the path to rebuilding the chaotic mess Hurricane Maria left could be mended by the uniting of Puerto Rico and the United States. I encourage you to sign petitions, participate in movements, and form organizations that can help bring attention to this urgent situation and save Puerto Rico from the downward spiral it is trapped in. Thank you.